So the summer break's over. Formula One finally returns after 3 long weeks this weekend for the Dutch Grand Prix, the penultimate time they'll be racing at Zandvoort as well. The forecast is terrible, but we are looking forward to seeing the racing as that battle between the two McLarens rekindles itself. Nick Golding from Racing News 365 is alongside me, Jon Jackson, here on Track. And Nick, I know you like to look at the weather, but you are concerned.
I mean, I love the weather until the last couple of months when everything is just being wet and dark and gloomy. And it kind of looks like that's going to be the exact same case for Zandvoort. The current forecast is quite literally it's very nice. I mean, this is very nice warm today on Tuesday. However, from Thursday onwards, it's going to be around 20 degrees, a lot of rain, increasingly heavy across the weekend. So some of the locals have even been tweeting on social media, don't be afraid or don't be surprised if the race is moved to Monday. So that's how much rain the locals are expecting. But it makes something interesting because this is going to be a massive challenge for the two McLaren drivers. They've spoken so much to the written media and the broadcasters when asked, what's going to make the difference this season in terms of winning the title. And instead of saying it'll be the fastest driver who wins, they've always said it's going to be the driver who makes the least mistakes. What if it's going to be a wet weekend at Zandvoort? That's going to open the door to one of them maybe making a mistake. So this could be actually, if it is wet and as wet as is expected, this could be an interesting weekend for the title fight.
Well, we saw Oscar Piastri make that mistake in a wet race for the first race of the season in Australia. And I don't really think he's made too many mistakes since then. So you'd think that for someone like Oscar, he's the kind of guy that will make one mistake and he'll learn from it and it will never happen again. He has a 9-point lead in the championship with Lando Norris right behind him. So for us as fans, for people who want a battle at the front of Formula One that we haven't seen since 2021 while Max Verstappen's been dominating, this is fantastic because we're going into the second half of the season. I know it's kind of over halfway, but the second half of the season after the summer break with these two drivers with not much between them at all. And, Verstappen's not completely out of it, but I think it's a little bit of a stretch given the car he's got.
If Verstappen wins the title, it will be the biggest shock maybe in modern F1 history because he's 97 points adrift. The fact that Helmut Marko, Rebel's motorsport advisor, has ruled him out, that kind of says it all. When Marko rules Max out, you normally listen. And it basically requires for Max to win this title, both McLarens to suffer several retirements. And I just don't see that happening. Of course, though, never say never. It is Max's home race. He'll be wanting a 4th home win. And I guess it still depends, though, on something happening to the McLaren drivers. Even if it's wet, you should still favour them for potentially a 1-2. They seem to have the best car in all conditions. Only time will tell, but yeah, I agree with you. I just don't see Oscar making many mistakes. And at least when he has made mistakes, it's not really cost him too much. Okay, you look at Silverstone and it cost him the win. He still finished second. He made obviously a couple of lockups in Austria and Hungary, but ultimately didn't collide with Lando. When Lando made his one big mistake, he obviously crashed into Oscar and had to retire from the Canadian Grand Prix. It's going to be a title fight, which is going to be decided on who makes the least mistakes. Is one going to happen this weekend? I think so. Just got a feeling.
I have a feeling. Well, I was thinking about this. You're Zach Brown, right? And we go a few more races. We know Oscar's got 6 wins so far this season. Lando's got 5. Both have been on the podium, I think 12 times. At some point, you would say, okay, when is one of the drivers going to be favoured? The papaya rules and everything like that. But they're so far ahead in the Constructors' Championship, 559 points ahead of Ferrari on 260. So, over double the amount of points ahead of the team behind them, that Zach Brown doesn't really have to make that decision. So I think as fans, we are going to get treated to this going down to the wire. They're going to let these guys race, as long as they do it respectfully and within the papaya rules, until Abu Dhabi, which I think as fans going into a new season where a lot of people have been looking forward to 2026 since it was all announced, this could have been one of those seasons that was a bit of a nothing season in effect. But this battle between these two young drivers from two different countries racing for, such an iconic brand in Formula One is actually great for us, the fans, the people that pay all the money to buy their t-shirts for 80 quid or whatever they are, the people that have to subscribe to watch it and get up at stupid times of the night to watch it all around the world. We're getting treated here.
The big question is going to be for me, how long can McLaren control their drivers and control this fight? We've seen in recent races, particularly when Oscar's come close to touching Lando, that they've got onto the radio very quickly to remind him of, McLaren's racing rules and to almost calm down effectively, and that it was too over the limit, particularly the one in Hungary, of course, going into turn 1 in the closing laps. He was very quickly reminded, Oscar, McLaren racing rules, do not do that again, sort of thing. And so far, both drivers have, with the exception of Canada, have very much complied with the rules from McLaren. So the question is going to be, how long can McLaren keep this element of control ultimately over its drivers? Because as you pointed out, this is likely going to go on now across the final 10 races. We've got 10 races across 15 weekends. It's going to go very, very quickly across these next 15 weeks. My big question is, as we get towards the end of the year, should there still be very few points between them? For Oscar and Lando, this would be their first F1 World Championship. And who knows, it could be their only chance in their entire F1 career to claim a world title. There's no saying they'll get this chance again. Can McLaren still keep that control over its drivers when we get to that crunch point in the final few rounds? I don't think so. I think if you're Lando and Oscar, are you going to be listening to your team telling you that was too aggressive, etc., etc.? If you're fighting for a title, could one move, or should I say not going for one move because of what the team are going to say to you, ultimately cost you the title? This is where it's such a fascinating thing, because there's so much weighing on this in terms of McLaren's control, but also how long Oscar and Lando listen to them.
I mean, that's one that's going to play out in front of our very eyes. Something else that's been playing out in front of our eyes is the struggles of Lewis Hamilton and the Ferrari team. He's been constantly outscored by Charles Leclerc. That kind of makes sense that he would outscore him a little bit because, he's been part of that family for a long time, whereas Lewis is completely learning a new language in effect, and he probably is learning a new language in Italian, although it was actually quite good when he spoke Italian before, so I think he's been learning for a little while. This is a good chance for them to sort of reset and attack these last races of the season. What are you expecting from Lewis and Ferrari as a whole?
I'm expecting a much more positive Lewis in Zandvoort because he can't really be more negative than he was in Hungary. And I guess this is the interesting thing on Thursday Media Day, because it will be the first time where he has to face the media, following on from the comments he came out with in Hungary, where he called himself useless, called for Ferrari to make a driver change. It was actually, it was quite shocking and quite saddening, actually, the comments that he was coming out with, because you can see how self-critical he is. Lando Norris, the driver, gets a lot of criticism for being so self-critical. Well, Lewis Hamilton took that to another level. But it's actually an interesting couple of races for him, because obviously Monza, Ferrari's, crown and jewel, it's home races. It's next weekend. And there is going to be so much expectation on Lewis to have a good weekend there. So for that to happen, I think he needs a good weekend in Zandvoort. And given the weather forecast, you'd normally think, it's going to be wet. Lewis Hamilton, that's his big chance. Well, actually, if you look at the two properly wet races this year in terms of Silverstone and Spa, at Silverstone, the Ferrari just did not work in the wet. But then in the opening stages of the Belgian Grand Prix in the wet, Lewis was the quickest driver. So there's also a massive consistency question, because teams are struggling to extract the same level of performance in very similar conditions at different circuits. So who is the wet going to favour? Could it be Lewis? Who knows? It's something we'll find out probably come practice, maybe FP3 quali, when we see the real pace. But he'll be positive, and if his recent social media posts is anything to go by, he's had some time to meditate, reflect on what's happened, and is ready to push on, because he can't endure the struggles anymore, because that's going to really hurt him going into 2026.
I've been enjoying seeing what the drivers have been getting up to during the summer break. I think my favourite thing was actually Max Verstappen still having that racers mentality out on the golf course with the golf buggy. You might have seen that with Antonio Felix da Costa sharing that on his Instagram, the Formula E driver. For Max and for the fans at Zandvoort, to wrap this up, it's going to be, they've only got a couple more opportunities to watch him race at Zandvoort. So even though he's maybe not dominating, it's still going to be a big Max Verstappen loving. We're going to see a lot of orange there, aren't we?
It is one of the best fan atmospheres on the calendar, because the Orange Army just makes such an atmosphere. And no matter what the weather is going to be this weekend, they're going to be there in their thousands with all the EDM music, electro stuff, just having an absolutely incredible time. And for Max, obviously, he's chasing a fourth win at home. And I kind of make this, and I was speaking to a colleague about this the other day, this is probably the first weekend this season where Max probably won't have questions about his future, because, of course, in Hungary, he confirmed he'll stick with Red Bull for 2026. He's been asked about his future every single race this season, but now everyone knows what he's doing for next year, that question probably shouldn't be asked. So this could give Red Bull and Max a real big chance now to purely focus on this weekend, on the rest of the season, and just the racing, and to get something out of this season, because despite Red Bull's struggles, they will want second in the constructors' standings because of the financial benefit that comes with it. We are speaking of big money here. So I'm expecting a big weekend from Max, and if I had to pick someone, I think he's going to win. I really do.
Okay, well, they're 66 points. Red Bull are behind Ferrari with Mercedes in between them, so fourth versus second. So they need all the points they can get at the moment. It's going to be a great weekend. We'll be covering it across the weekend on talkSPORT and on talkSPORT.com. Of course, you'll be covering it, Nick, as well at Racing News 365. And we look forward to getting back-to-back race weekends. And of course, we have F1 Academy back this weekend at Zandvoort as well.